again. Hello again. Thanks for waiting. As we are seeing, one of the aims of Talent Arena is to inspire digital talents with the knowledge and with the reflections of the most recognized professionals in the world. And today, we will have the opportunity to listen to one of the visionaries of a company that contributed to change how we relate with technology. Today, it's a pleasure to welcome Steve Wozniak, co-founder of Apple, in this fireside chat moderated by Cristina Gallardo, journalist at Wall Street Journal and Dow Jones. Let's welcome. Thank you very much.
Hello, everyone. Welcome. My name is Cristina Gallardo, and I'm a business reporter for Dow Jones and the Wall Street Journal. And it is my absolute honor to welcome a true icon of innovation to the stage today, Steve Wozniak, an engineer, an inventor, a philanthropist, and the co-founder of Apple with Steve Jobs. And the two of them co-founded Apple thanks to these Steve's creations, the Apple I and Apple II computer, which kick-started the personal computing revolution. So today we have a very rare opportunity to hear directly from Steve on his career achievements, on his thoughts about technology, past and future. So I'm really looking forward to this conversation. But before I start today, let me warn you that there will be a short Q&A session at the end, so please start thinking about what you might want to ask Steve when the time comes. So Steve, welcome. Thank you for crossing the Atlantic to be with us here today.
Great to be here. What an entrance. We had a big parade.
You're one of the most widely known figures in the history of modern computing, but I would like to start perhaps with a couple of anecdotes or facts about your life that perhaps you think are not so publicly well known.
Oh, sure. Well, when I was very young, I excelled in mathematics, and that leads to an awful lot of other things. So I would get math awards in my schools, and my father was an electrical engineer, so I started learning electronics at a very early age. Like at 9 years old, I was building incredible science fair projects with hundreds of parts, and I knew all the formulas for the old electronics, the old days before digital. And my father, never put his values on me. Said, this is what you have to do in life. This is what you have to study. I admired what he did, so I wanted to be an engineer like he. But he would express, social and political different spectrums. And I only decided, he never said you should be one way or another. Always let us choose from our own education, and I was very thankful for that. So when I had my own children, I raised them the same way. I did not put my values on them. I let them find them among friends and all like that. Now, around fourth grade, they tested our IQ, and mine was over 200, but my parents never told me.
Oh, wow.
I am so thankful that they never told me. I just wanted to be normal, in the middle, like other kids. I didn't want to skip grades in school, and I became very shy at a certain age, and the shyness is probably why I'm here today. When I became shy, I don't like to deal with other people. I don't like to get in conflicts, arguments, or anything. And I just want to be quiet. And in my own time, I don't want to study the things everyone else is studying, because then you'll learn the same things a million people learn. And I decided it was try to go off and find things nobody else is doing. Back in those days, computers was a farther out word than rocket scientist. And you couldn't, but there were no books on how to make a computer. What made them? And I found a little journal here and there and learned about ones and zeros and binary, and I learned about other storage mechanisms. And I started playing on paper with a pencil on paper, designing computers and computer-like things in my spare time, largely for science fairs, which are not a school project. I had no friends that did it with me, no parents, no teachers doing this with me. I would just go in my bedroom and work on it with a pencil and paper, trying to teach myself, how would you design a computer out of the lumber of the day, the simple chips that existed back then. And actually by 10 years old, I got a ham radio license. Back in those old days, if there was a disaster in the world, like a hurricane or tornado or something, an island might get shut down, and the only communication would be ham radio operators sending messages both by speech and by Morse code keys, telegraph keys. And I read a book where the heroes were ham radio operators, and I said, oh my gosh, you cannot get a driver's license at 10 years old, but you can get a ham radio license. So I studied a lot of stuff, a lot of mathematical formulas, a lot of rules and regulations, and got my ham radio license at 10 years old. And I was proud of that. My parents bought me, it must have cost $1,000 or more of today's dollars. They bought me a receiver for that much and a transmitter for that much. They came as a box full of parts and instructions how to hook them together with soldering irons and tools and pliers and winding coils, and I made my own ham radio. So I was a builder. That was very, very important. Not just learning to be an engineer is one thing, but when you're a builder also, you make complete, finished solutions. That's something that was so important in my life, much more than I realized it, but nobody else had. I can't believe when I look back to how young and small I was, the huge complexity of that and some science fair projects I built with hundreds of parts that did this digital stuff. So I was both an old analog engineer. By the time, after high school, I could have been a television engineer, a television repairman existed. They had repair shops back in those days. I understood the old analog television, but now I also understood digital enough to design my own computers. And when I graduated high school, I didn't know that engineers designed computers. I thought engineers only made radios and televisions, the old analog stuff, radar, and that kind of stuff. And I was going to be an engineer, but I had no idea that this thing that I loved so much, trying to teach myself how to design full computers, would be worth something. I just followed it because it was in my heart. It was my passion. And eventually, at the end of high school, I would get manuals for all the mini computers coming out. These were boxes about so big, with switches for ones and zeros, lights for ones and zeros. And I would get all the manuals for Hewlett-Packard ones, Digital Equipment, Varian Corporation, IBM, and a lot of other companies, Data General. I told my dad, before the end of high school, I told him I am going to have my own Data General 4K Nova computer. 4K was the minimum you needed to type programs in. My dad said it costs as much as a house. I said, I'll live in an apartment. I was going to have my own computer. It was a core value inside of me. I was going to have my own computer before I even had a house. And so that was, I kept watching every step of the way when I discovered getting closer and closer to building a computer I could afford. And there were a lot of great steps along the way. For example, with computers in those days, I could design on a piece of paper what little chips would make the processor. Today, you just buy a microprocessor chip. But I had all the chips that added up and built a processor, and I would design that. But the input, I could never afford input and output. Oh my gosh, the huge teletypes like you see in the movies in the military. Those teletypes cost, multiple cars to buy. that was going to be the hard part. I started thinking about, oh, could I use an oscilloscope and draw pictures on it? Oscilloscope is a digital equipment, but it's sort of a TV screen. And then one day I saw Pong, the game Pong. I loved video games. I loved arcade games. Atari was starting the arcade game industry. And I said, oh my gosh, a television can be your output device. And I knew everything about television. I could design all these chips that would put little dots on a screen to be balls and paddles. And I built up a little Pong game. Then eventually I designed a game called Breakout for Atari. So I love these games. And while I was down at Atari with no sleep for 4 days and nights, no sleep, I thought, wouldn't it be great if these arcade games someday were color? And my head started popping around to the old analog method of color with $5,000 worth of parts and long design with all these feedback loops and differential calculus. And for some reason, my head said, wait a minute, what if I took a digital number, ones and zeros, from my computer memory and put it on the wire into the TV? And I realized that every TV would think it was color. And I don't mind violating the rules, going outside the box. There were no rules in all the mathematics of color TV that it should have worked, but it's the reason Apple's color first logo was 6 colors. But that was, so I was following this step and getting closer and closer to the computers. The ARPANET came along. Today we have the internet. How many devices are in the internet? 6, 10, 20, trillion? Okay, back then, the ARPANET started it. 6 computers were linked up to each other. 6 computers across the United States. And I wanted anything I saw or heard about, I wanted to be a part of and explore it. And I went and I designed a little terminal where I could type on a keyboard that cost hundreds of today's dollars back then. And my TV was free because I owned it. And I set it up so I could type to a computer across the country, or UCLA, UC Santa Barbara. There were 6 computers. I could go in and read files and run programs and things. And that was one step closer to the real computers I developed. Then it came a club of people that believed someday we were going to own computer technologies. People were going to afford computers. And look how much computer technology can do once we have it ourselves. Back then it was only huge companies or the military that could afford the big computers. And I'd always wanted one myself. So this club attracted me, and I figured out the formula the first night of that club of, you know, a couple hundred people talking about, wow, we're going to communicate so well fast when we have computers, and we're going to educate better, and the geek is going to be important. And I designed my computer, never raised a hand in the club meeting, never talked, but after the main part of the meeting, I would set up my TV and keyboard and start typing, and I'd put my own computer there with a microprocessor as the brains and the right kind of memory that was 1/4 the cost of what everyone else was trying, because it was the right kind. You just needed to be an engineer to do it. And oh my gosh, I'd be typing on a keyboard and it'd pop up on a TV screen, and every computer before that day had a big front panel, metal panel with all these holes and switches and lights for ones and zeros. I had built that computer 5 years before. On my own. I designed and built it and got the parts. So I didn't want to do that. I wanted something that was more human. Type on a keyboard like a typewriter, type and see the results, see the answers come out. And every computer before this period had a big front panel with ugly switches and lights that was geeky. Every computer since I showed that one off at the club has had a keyboard and a video display. And I was sort of a hero in the club, and I passed out my designs for free, public domain, no copyright notices, nothing. There was no industry yet anyway, and passed it out to all the people that wanted to create this big revolution in computers in the hands of individuals. And so I was giving it out, and then unlike the movie with Ashton Kutcher, where Steve Jobs comes and finds me in a basement and hauls me down to a club, he'd never been to the club. I'd been there every day since the first day it started. I took him. to show them the excitement.
Let me ask you another question, because the Apple II computer remained Apple's main source of income for over a decade. Decades later, Apple is still with us. It's a massive company. Would you say Apple remains a tech disruptor nowadays?
I didn't hear the question right.
Would you say Apple remains a tech disruptor nowadays?
Ouch. I don't know what the question is.
Tech disruptor. Is Apple still disrupting technology nowadays?
I don't know, I can go back to the Apple II computer. And the Apple II computer was really the big start for Apple. It was so far ahead of anything else because it was the first time ever arcade games were color. Even though it was a computer, it was the first time ever arcade games were software. That meant that a 9-year-old kid in the language BASIC could make blue and green dots move on a screen and create a game in one night. Before that, it was 100 chips with 1,000 wires, engineer working for maybe a man-year to get together a new game prototype. This was a huge change in gaming as well as computing. And that one computer was so advanced, it helped us. We had an investor that believed in us, Mike Markula, donated the money, and he was the adult in the room. Steve and I were in our young 20s. We had no money in a bank account. We had no business experience. Mike Markula told us who you have to hire, what positions and what their roles and responsibilities were to have a company. So anyway, he invested in this. I said no at first because I had told everyone in my life I would be an engineer at Hewlett-Packard for life. I never would move up the org chart because when I was younger during Vietnam War days, I decided not going to be political, never going to vote. And when you move up an org chart, you get kind of political. I not want to direct other people to do things my way. I just want to do great engineering, hardware and software, and show it off. And that was the reason I built this computer. I finally accepted the money to start Apple because I realized we could start Apple and I didn't have to run the company.
Yeah.
I could just be an engineer. That's what I wanted.
Now that you mentioned politics, the fast technology revolution has given great power and influence to some US tech companies. And nowadays we are seeing some of its leaders actually going into politics and trying to change things by playing a political role. That's the case of Elon Musk, for instance. Do you think Elon will regret having made that move into politics?
Again, the echo is so horrible in here. It's very hard for me to hear you.
You cannot hear me.
Yeah?
I'm asking you, this is getting intimate. I'm asking you about political moves, so entrepreneurs going into politics, such as Elon Musk. Do you think Elon will regret having made that move into politics? Should innovators go into politics?
I think that the skills of politics are very different than the skills for technology companies to have success. So in general, I don't know. It does make sense to run a government like a business, but I don't see that happening in the case of Elon Musk.
Yeah.
I mean, when you run a business, you look around and you look for a consensus and a sharing, and you know, if half your employees feel one way and half the other way, you negotiate, you compromise, or you take one bit at a time. If you're looking to be efficient, one item at a time that maybe we can manufacture a different way or get a different part from somewhere else, but you don't just say everything is out and start fresh. So I don't like what's going on in that regard. And all the big tech companies are just so big. It's like they own our lives. It used to be when we started Apple, we had computer. You bought a computer. You ran some software on it. And you set up and ran your company or whatever with all this stuff. And it always worked, and it was your own. Whatever setups you made worked. Eventually, the internet came. After the internet, then came the social web. Then came high bandwidth. And nowadays, you have to subscribe to everything. And then once you've subscribed, you don't own it.
Yeah.
You're going through somebody on the cloud. The cloud is a problem. It's not like the old days where you bought something, you owned it yourself. You protected it yourself. You kept it working yourself. Nowadays, you have to trust that every upgrade, I almost think, oh my God, sometimes so often they're downgrades, it seems. And it's something that used to be easy is now hard or worse. So,
do you think we are going to see more of these tech bros going into politics? And what would be your advice to them? Because as you said, the skill sets are really different.
Technology companies are huge, you know, and if they're that huge and worth that much money, they have to have some political involvement. They've always hired, I'm so non-political. It's the guys that go to lunch with all the congressmen and push ideas on them.
Yeah.
I mean, we've always had that. So there's some involvement. There's got to be some involvement, but actually taking direct roles, oversight of it, just because they've made it big in technology, I don't like that at all from what I'm seeing.
Okay. I would also like to ask you about AI safety, artificial intelligence safety, because I know that your thoughts on that have evolved throughout the years. So I wonder whether you feel more worried or more relaxed nowadays after the advent of AI chatbots like ChatGPT or any of the others. Are you worried about AI safety?
AI safety. Well, everybody notices AI has certain problems, so you should at least be aware of it. Everybody says AI should be regulated, but they just throw it out as a word because they're making AI. And I've said for years now how it should be regulated. You should know if you're reading something that came directly from AI, not from a human that interpreted it and put it in their own words. It's coming from AI. You should be told which AI, how was it trained, what sources on the internet was it trained on, and you should have citations like scientific articles in scientific journals, always have citations so you can look at a part of their article and click a number and you'll find out, oh, here's the research or here's the article that they took that from as they build their case. Those are citations. And that means on AI, I'd really like, if I got something I'm told is from AI, let me click on one phrase or one sentence and see where on the internet or wherever, some other net, it came from. And that would help me judge a little better, is it accurate or not? Is it the right thing? If you read something, we humans have more of an emotional feel. If we're expressing an idea, we know that it feels good or bad. We know how other humans will take it. And one of the things about that is if you get an AI report, it can be very complete and well written and proper grammar, but it's not necessarily the same thing that two different people would say. Three people. There are a lot of subjectivity and people are different, and trying to condense it all down and saying there's only one answer here. There's only one type of rule. I don't like that. I like more of a sharing, everybody's putting their own ideas into things. Mm-hmm. So that's a problem to be aware of. Now, one of the things is if you just pass AI results on as your own, you lose the ability to think critically and to decide things yourself. And it just becomes an easy escape. Just like, look, I used to be able to add numbers in my head, and now I have to go, hey, Siri, or somebody, what is 5 plus 7? So, you know, you get used to it very much. AI is going to be very helpful. Oh my gosh, I'm doing some work. AI can give me a lot of ideas to think in certain directions or where I might want to go, but I, the human, has to receive it, interpret it, and then be able to put it into my own substance. For example, the world moves forward, especially the world of technology, moves forward with creativity, with innovation. That's new things that didn't exist before. AI is a real good reporter of things that are already in existence being said. Maybe someday AI will be able to think for itself and be innovative. Maybe someday it might even have a little emotional feeling for, you know, maybe a person rescues an animal. And I can cry when I read stories like that. And I don't think AI cries. So understand, I believe it in the A. I just don't believe in the eye so much. All my life, I was paying attention to the abilities of the brain that were much more capable than the speed of a computer. All my life, and when I went back to college I started Apple with only 3 years of college. And when I went back to college, I had to use a fake name because my name was well known. So my Berkeley diploma says Rocky Raccoon Clark. That's who I was. But I was a psychology major as much as anything. And I wanted to study the brain. And all I found out was we don't know how the brain's wired like we do electronic circuits. And we don't even know that our memories are stored in the brain. We have good reason to suspect it, but we can never find a memory. The strongest correlation you'll find, I came up with 40 years ago, you lose two things between the ages of 6 and 10 years old. You lose your childhood autobiographic memories, things that happened to you, and you lose your teeth in those years. And everybody knows memories aren't in teeth. So I was just pointing out the books on memory are not, even to this day, just not complete enough we could take a memory. Because the whole idea is we want to duplicate a brain. We want to take a brain and figure out a way, maybe 1 trillion instances in software that equals a real human brain, not just what we call AI. And I was at a company once where the engineers figured out how to make a brain. Takes 9 months.
One thing that AI chatbots have got really good at is writing code. Writing code.
Oh, yeah.
Do you think chatbots will replace software developers and, remove jobs? Sorry, guys, I know there are plenty of software developers
I wouldn't
here.
give a real general description, have AI write a program and pass it on. I would want to inspect it and check it. It can be very helpful to me as a human to get what I need for my boss or my class in school. But it's just, I don't know. I'm like everyone else. Hold back, look at it, try to pass on what you think is good, and will the problems increase? Not to mention some of the problems with AI, the deep fakes. The deep fakes. I hate spammers. I hate the people trying to get your passwords and take all your money. I hate all this. And now they have one more tool. They have AI, so they can do a better job. And AI can trick you into things, and that's a method I'm not for. I believe that things should be respected for their honesty. You can rely on them. You can count on them. And AI is already demonstrating that it hallucinates and makes things up, but you don't know when. If you just believe it, you're a sucker. I mean, I read jokes on the internet all the time, or I read a funny story about something that happened, and I pass it on to a list of 100 friends, and then I find out that it was made up. It wasn't real.
Yeah.
So humans can make mistakes
Speaking of which, do you think there should be more open source large language models?
Well, AI should be open source.
Yes.
Oh, yes. Well, everything should be open source in my mind. I mean, the principles behind... By the way, I'm one of the founders of the EFF, and those of you know what it's about. It's very much into privacy concerns, civil rights, and open source. But open source is just the ability to go back, improve things, take somebody else's knowledge and improve on it, find a bug in it, fix things. It's just, why keep it hidden? You're trying to keep a hidden advantage, so if you're lucky enough to be in the key position like a big company is, then other people can't intrude maybe, patents and all that. I don't know. I believe in the right to repair. And I've stood up for it publicly many times.
There is another very big debate taking place at the moment, both in the US and in Europe, which is the one about working from home. There is the group of people who advocate for working from home and those who insist on returning to the office full-time. Which camp are you in?
Well, for me, COVID was the best thing ever. Because I have a life of traveling a lot of places and speaking like this. And during COVID, got to stay at home. My wife and I took 40 trips in the car to every national park in California, every corner of California, and we'd turn around and drive back. We could drive together and talk and listen to audiobooks and music, and we'd carry our 4 dogs with us, our children. That was just wonderful. So what started me off on this?
Yes, whether you are pro working
yes,
from home.
yeah. So a lot of people discovered that they could be quite productive working at home, and it's convenient. The workers like it very much. Nowadays, the thing is, a company wants to have a management structure. Those at the top control the ones under them, control the ones down to the worker. You have bosses, you have managers in between. And what do they have if everybody's working at home? They have a lot more control if you're there in one spot. And there are certain things, certain types of communication and meetings that work out better in person. So I believe in the hybrid. The hybrid mode is good. Have certain days that everybody can be expected that's working together, can be expected to be together, and every day if they want to. But other days, they're, to a certain amount of time, they can work from home or anywhere in the world. This has really turned out to be a boon that we never knew that it could work, and now we do.
You witnessed the transformation of Silicon Valley from a very nice place with fruit trees and nice homes to the world's epicenter of innovation. And I would like to hear from you about that, because Barcelona is on its own journey to becoming a global tech hub and is attracting lots of talent from many countries. Is it still necessary to move to Silicon Valley to make it as a global entrepreneur?
Oh no, for 10 or 20 years, people would always be asking around the world, oh, how do we have a Silicon Valley? Well, it has to grow organically, but now it's really not like there's one place in the world. The formula is there. People that have good ideas, start new companies, are innovative, and it's popping up in about at least a dozen places in the United States are popping up. High technology levels, about the same number of people working in technology as in Silicon Valley. And I don't think Silicon Valley is all that much necessary for anything new and dramatic in the world. It'll change the world. The next Uber doesn't have to come from Silicon Valley. And I like things to be shared. People have brains everywhere in the world. I like everywhere I go in the world for those people to be able to create their own innovations that are so good, that become very world famous and all that. And that's how I grew up. When I was designing stuff, I was designing what I felt like doing. I was an independent innovator, independent inventor, not really an engineer, an inventor. And I want to leave room for those inventors around the world to this day. So I'm glad to see this idea of just Silicon Valley dispersing and other people learning from us. And who knows? Who knows where it goes from here? But I expect look at the interest here in Barcelona, and so much development occurs here. People want to do it, and the wanting is more important than the knowledge. When I was a teacher for a long time, when I taught, the teacher always teaches correct knowledge. But if you can make the students want to learn, you cannot stop them from learning. I decided wanting is even more important than knowing.
Now that you mentioned that you were a teacher, what are your thoughts on the use of AI agents in education? AI agents.
AI agents?
In education.
In innovation?
In education.
What?
In education.
Oh, in education. AI agents in education. Oh, we should certainly include it in our higher education. When I taught, I was teaching K-12, actually 10 to 13-year-olds, because it had been a goal of mine my whole life, just like having my own computer. And AI agents, first of all, when you're talking primary education, you're talking about, you've got to learn how to think first and not have it done for you. It's going to be very important, though, for higher education to learn how to use AI to its fullest and best to get categories of work done. Hopefully, projects in the future in technology will need fewer human beings working on them, using AI effectively, and then the other human beings can be working on more projects. We can get more out of life. So in education, well, I mean, AI agents, let's see how it goes.
One thing that has bothered me ever since I started writing about business, and particularly about startups, is the huge pressure that young entrepreneurs are under to raise capital investment since very early on. And I wonder whether, had you been under that type of pressure, were you be able to develop the Apple II computer?
Okay, young entrepreneurial-minded people. Oh, I want to have my own company someday. I have ideas, I have good thinking. Well, first of all, if you're going to start something, you better not just start what AI says. You better think of something more creative that hasn't been done yet. And you better do an excellent, excellent job. And that means you'd better have an engineer thinking out what you're going to make. If you're going to be an entrepreneur, don't just come out with a business plan and thinking, and we'll hire the engineers later. Get the engineers involved, and you'll think they're used to solving problems and finding alternatives better than any other class of people, and you should include them from the beginning. Also, if you're going to be starting a small company, maybe you're just in school still, in a university perhaps, you're going to need good business thinking that says, I'm going to keep track and make sure this business is making money. That's the most important thing. It's got to live, or it dies. Second, you'll need some good marketing, good abilities to conceive which ideas are good, which are bad, which are how good. What is the value of certain ideas? What is the competition like? Well, fit into place. That marketing thinking is very important. And third, you better have the engineering from the start. And don't just hold out and say, we'll hire the engineers because we're the smart ones with the idea. No, include the engineers from the start. And you got to have those three categories: business, marketing, engineering. They could be in one person. They could be in two people. They could be in three people, whatever it takes. And then respect the other disciplines. Let's say you're an engineer, a bright engineer, and you can create some program all on your own, some software. Don't think you are the whole key to what happens. Respect the marketing, respect the engineer, respect the legal, respect the accountants, respect operations that build things. Respect all the other categories. You're all part of a huge company. I felt that very much at Apple. And you know, when Apple had this huge success that I'd never sought, I just wanted other engineers to respect my mind and my thinking. When Apple was successful, 3 of us had infinite money. And I didn't feel good about it because I never went after that. So I looked around and I sold some stock before IPO, pre-IPO, to all the employees of the company. They're all working for the same company. And each one of them got basically a house out of that. And I gave huge amounts of my stock to early other people. What is a founder? It's an early person. And yeah, you can go back to the movie where Steve Jobs refused to give this one early guy any stock. And the guy who was playing me, which was Josh Gad, had read my book. And he wanted to put in the fact that I had done it, but they wouldn't do it in that movie. But anyway, that's the way I think. I did not want that wealth. I didn't want to lead that high up life. So I just put it into museums and arts groups and things like that. In the city I was born in, San Jose, California. And thank you. And the city of San Jose named a street after me, Woz Way. It's a great street, goes past important things. So I don't know, it's not the sort of thing you buy or you seek wealth for.
If you were to start a business today, a new company, which area of technology would you pick?
Which what?
Which area of technology?
Which AI technology?
Area of technology. What type of technology would you focus on?
Oh, if I were going into business today, it's very different than back then. I always look back when I was starting, and if I had a piece of advice to myself, rob a bank. I could have had a few other little choices with a little extra money to move things faster. But starting a business today, would I look at technology? It's what you're good at already. Whatever you're good at is what you value and what your passion to learn more and more and be better at. And would it be, it might be creating aspects like social webs that aren't owned by anybody, aren't controlled. Kind of like Bitcoin's not controlled by anyone. And it's just all the different people running their software work out all the details and friendships and all that, and works just as well as, say, Facebook. That's probably where I might go, or I might want to, because that helps undo the thing I spoke about earlier. The companies control you. You buy a car maybe, and it's all set up working nicely, and then they have an update. Everything moved, and your hands used to learn where to go. Even on a phone, your hands learn where to go. And the update, why did they change it so much? It was fine. And maybe I'd want to find a way around that a little bit. Back to some of the older principles. You buy something, you own it, you set it up, nobody changes it on you. You know, even to this day, I want to own my own things. Every time I hear songs that I want to get, which is, you know, I love to go to concerts with my wife, dozens a year. But when I hear a song I want, I will still go online and purchase it for money. Yeah. And then I can share that song with my family or my wife. But I don't like to just stream it and say, oh, I'm just on a streaming service. And no, I have my list of songs that I bought because I like them and I know what they are. Yeah.
After you developed the Apple II computer, you didn't stop innovating because you came up with the universal remote controller in the late 80s, which you commercialized through a brand new company called Cloud9. Let me ask you a question. Was it harder to come up with the product and sell it outside an established company such as Apple? Did the experience feel different?
Okay. Well, the Apple II computer involved an awful lot of projects right away to connect it to printers, newer kinds of printers. The floppy disk was an incredible design, so you could run a program. I did one for European, the PAL television system. It was one of the favorite jobs of my life, and I did one for the Air Apple that talked from right to left, and certain letters caused it to add ones at the end of a word. That was a weird one. But I loved all those projects. Now, and we were getting into, what were we after? What was your end?
The universal remote controller and Cloud9.
Oh, the remote control. Yes, of course. I'm sitting around Apple. Well, I had an unusual situation in my home. In some of the early Apple days, Apple had made it, but everybody had a remote control for their television and a remote control for their VCR. And I had a Laserdisc. Not many people in the United States bought Laserdiscs, but that was another remote control. And I loved my Laserdisc. And then there was no satellite TV yet, but I built one of those big, huge dishes in my yard, pointed it up, and I bought a receiver that could aim the TV and pinpoint a channel from a guy in Canada with another remote control. No hi-fi, only one hi-fi in the world had a remote control. It just happened to be the hi-fi I had, a Bang & Olufsen in those days. 5 remotes. I said, why don't you just make them into one? And so I didn't leave Apple. They say I left Apple. I did go off on the side to do this little company, a startup company, to build the universal remote control. But I was still on Apple's paycheck, still loyal to Apple, still doing some things for Apple. And the control that I dreamed of was like a computer in your hand. It was like an Apple II in your hand and assigning codes to buttons that would operate your equipment. But what it would do is you could take a remote control for your TV and point it at my device, and it would learn the code. It would watch the infrared signals and learn the code. Then you could point one from the satellite receiver and push a few buttons, and it would learn all the codes. And then you could push one button, and it beeps out beep, 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 all the codes from the different devices, and gets to the channel you want. It was a really beautiful device. Loved it. On the way, we even came up with another little side project. You know, sometimes you're working on something and another idea occurs to you. The idea that occurs to us is we've gotten very good at receiving infrared signals, and we've gotten very good at transmitting them at high power, so you didn't have to aim your control precisely. You kind of point it anywhere. So we made a little tiny device that cost very little, and it clipped onto any remote control and amplified it. So your existing remote control that you had to point precisely, you now didn't even care where you pointed it. It worked. And that was called the Tyrone. So I had a lot of fun doing these projects.
That's great. We're going to get some questions from the floor. So please raise your hand and let me see if I can find our colleague with the microphone over there. So maybe this woman over here. First one. The woman, sorry.
Thank you. Hello?
Hi.
Hi. It's an honor to see you in person, so thank you for being here. You said that we are trying to mimic the human brain, but really this is the only thing that separates us from machines. So why are we trying to recreate the thing that gives us creativity, and don't you have fears about that?
Well,
thank you.
I don't know if first of all, the machines, this idea if a machine replaces a human, you know, I'm glad we're not there yet. I hope it never happens. But if a company started up across the street from Apple, and instead of humans, they just had computers talking to computers, if it was more economic, economics wins. That's a scary thought, where the humans go. But then, you know, you'd have to have a world where an upper computer that's like the president of the world directs some other computers, who direct other computers like managers, who direct all the equipment that goes around, right down to digging ores out of the earth. Everything on computers, how many hundreds of years or thousands of years would it take to change our total infrastructure? But the machines are not intelligent yet. We still haven't found the formula. We don't know how to make a brain yet. So I just don't think it's a worry at all. I think everything we're doing trying to make a brain. There are people trying to figure out the formula, you know, pretty much to get to AGI like we have today. They've been working on that. And that doesn't mean they're trying to get rid of humans. If the computers ever replace we humans, here's what it would be. The computers do all the work. And we get our clothing, and we get our education, and we get our food, and we get our family vacations, and we don't have to do a thing, work. Wait a minute. That means we're like the family dog. We're a pet. We're a pet with everything taken care of. How wonderful. Well, if I'm going to be a pet, I decided, how would I want to be treated? I started getting my dogs filet steaks and rotisserie chicken. But if the computers ever get rid of people, replace people, they better not replace the dogs. I can say that.
One more question. Who wants to ask? What is the mic? Do you have the mic? Okay. Maybe here, first row? You.
I'll go back a little more on the last answer, which is,
yes.
The problem is we can't stop others from trying to substitute for the human brain.
Yep.
We can't stop it if it happens, but we can certainly be aware of it and watch for it and pledge to ourselves. You make a pledge to yourself, you never break a promise that's to yourself, that you won't work in that kind of thing. Yeah.
We're going to go to this question here.
Thank you very much. So over the past few days that we've been here, we've been hearing a lot of good news. And one of the things that have shocked me, and I wanted, as one of the first personal computer builders, how do you feel about quantum computers? So one of the views that we have shown us is that maybe to build a quantum computer, you need a whole new computer built. And that's something that maybe you can enlighten us, having built one yourself before.
So I believe the question was about quantum computers.
Yes, that maybe we need to build one computer, new computer, different to the traditional ones.
Quantum computers have some incredible promise, but we just haven't made them work or usable yet for us. Maybe that'll happen. You can't say it'll never happen. So all these promises take so long and don't come to fruition. You start to wonder what is it really, where's it really going to make us stay? I'm not an expert on quantum computers, but I certainly think that if let's say they improve the speed of today's computers, let's say they improve the memory storage, kind of along the lines of the book Singularity, that computers increase their storage exponentially, they increase their processing ability, and they equal the brain by a certain date. And maybe quantum computers can go far beyond where today's electronic computers go. And that is, that's good. Why? Well, we talk about, I mean, it's not really taking over the world too well, but things like the metaverse, where you can turn your head and be in a world, a whole different world, anywhere. But if you want high resolution, the way the eye sees, you know, a little 4K resolution camera, and another 10 times around and 10 times this way, 100 times the resolution of today's high quality video, that's a lot more resolution. We need bandwidth that we need and processing ability in computers. So it might be used for that. An alternative to quantum computing is photonic computing. It may get here someday. It hasn't for all the decades I've watched it, but in photonic computers, okay, you think electrons go through chips. Electricity is what runs the chips that are in your phone. Wait a minute, electrons don't go at the speed of light. It's a wave, an electron wave that's much slower than the speed of light. Photons actually do go at the speed of light, so what if we could make logic elements in computers that make decisions and or decisions, just like a light switch. That's all today's computers are based on that. And or, and it has inversion, like a blue light comes in, red light comes out, red light comes in, blue light comes out, whatever your modulation scheme is. And you need amplifiers too along the way. We're so close to having all those things makeable onto a chip, and that would speed chips up hugely as well. So I hope something comes that gives us more in our lives. It's fun, if nothing else, to watch all the increases and what they make possible.
I think we have time for one more question. So let's roll the mic, if I may, let's roll the mic over here so this side has a chance as well to ask. Maybe he, who is very keen, over there, in the middle.
Well positioned.
It's so full today. Hi.
Thank you very much, Mr. Wozniak, for your inspiring words. My question was the following. We have seen in recent years some prominent tech stars like Sam Altman in OpenAI or Aravind Srinivas in Perplexity. Do you envision yourself in this kind of tech stars?
I need a repeat of the question. I still get the echo no matter.
Yeah.
Do
No.
you think?
We have seen some prominent tech stars like Sam Altman in OpenAI and Aravind Srinivas with Perplexity. And my question was if you kind of reflect yourself in these kind of persons that are rising in the tech ecosystem.
If you think of yourself as a tech star in nowadays terms.
Oh, I definitely think of myself as a tech star back when it was important. Things had to start somewhere. They had to start somewhere. These days, I'm not a developer, so I'm behind on people that are doing current development. All I develop is just little personal projects on my Raspberry Pi. But I do it for fun, just like I did back then. So, thank you.
Well, I think that's all the time that we have today. Thank you so much.
Thank you, thank you. Go Barcelona.
That's been a fantastic conversation. Thank you.
Very much for this inspiring session, Mr. Wozniak and Cristina Gallardo. A big pleasure to hear you. Let's take a short break and we will continue in only a few minutes with more inspiring conferences. See you now.